I don't know, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I have the impression you're one of the luckiest, one of the happiest CEOs in Switzerland.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. I think I'm certainly the luckiest one, and I think it's, I have to say, I appreciate every day the chance I have to be able to work in Idorsia.
And you can work what you always wanted to do, you can follow your passion, and you're highly successful. What's the secret behind your success?
I think it's when you like science, it's a passion, and so you do not work, you live your passion. And every day you don't know what you're going to find in the evening. Every day you have the unknown. You say, you know, is this drug going to work? Is this product going to be active? So it's a very interesting feeling. And this is really why we decided to recreate Idorsia.
You say that science is in the center of what you do, of everything that you do. Would you say that at the end of the day, you're still a scientist and you're not really an entrepreneur, or you're not really an economist, that science has always been your main driver?
Absolutely. In fact, you know, when we created Actelion with Thomas Widman, Walter Fischli, my wife and myself, we wanted to create an environment where science would be able to really drive the business. And of course, then, you know, making the profit, making money as a company allows you to do more science. Mm-hmm. So the more successful you are on the market, the more science you can do. And I think this is what is really incredible, because science, for when you are a medical doctor, for pharmaceutical industry, it's not only abstract. It means helping patients. It means changing the life of people. So it's really incredibly motivating.
So one might say you are money-driven, but only to be able to do what your passion is and to be able to recreate new success and create new drugs.
You know, I always remember one sentence when I used to learn Latin at school, and we were translating Cesar's talk, and Cesar was saying, you know, he liked power because it allowed him to do things. Some people like power for power.
Do you like power?
No, no, I like to be able to do things that I want. I'm really a little bit driven, so I really want to achieve something. And, you know, to be CEO, for example, is not really because I can lead people. It's because it allows me to do what I want to do and to have some influence on what we can do within Idorsia. So it's really, I think the motivation really for my, I'm sure for my wife, for myself, is really science improving, finding new drugs, improving the life of people. And of course we like it, so it's we get a benefit, but you know, we like to discover new things.
Since you speak of your wife, this is a collective effort, and it's always been at Actelion already, Idorsia as well. Your wife Martine is at the center of everything that you do as well. How important is that partnership, that relationship for the company as well?
No, I think that for both of us, it was very important because, you know, when you go through tough time, when you go to failures, and not all our drugs did work, and we had some problems, it's very important that at least your wife understands what is going on. And of course, you know, the company was based on the drug discovered by my wife. So she played a very key role, and we have the same passion. So it's really helping you to go through tough times. And also, I would say it's a synergistic effect. You know, you really, it's 1 + 1 is much more than 2.
Isn't there a risk to be too much involved in the whole thing? I mean, are there ever times you can both switch off and talk about anything else than Idorsia?
When you have 3 children and now 3 grandchildren, I can tell you, you have to have time outside. So it's very clear that you need a discipline. At home, it's home. We can really, we like films, we like cinema, we like practicing sports, doing ski, and so I think you need a discipline. Otherwise, it's too invading, and then you know you are not anymore benefiting from this situation. no, we need to be disciplined.
You just said before that, I mean, you're a relatively new CEO at Idorsia, because Idorsia is relatively new. It only got created last year. But of course, you're kind of redoing your experience that you had with Actelion. Do you do anything differently now that you have that new company, that you're in a new CEO role? Did you learn anything from Actelion that you said, I'm not going to do that mistake again?
Yes, I hope I have learned a lot of things with my previous life in Actelion. So first, people say you try to redo. It's not an Actelion bis, it's an Actelion plus. We want to do it much better, much faster, much stronger, much larger. This is really not we want to do. And that means, of course, we are going to learn our lessons. That means, for example, that we decided to become a big shareholders, which we could not do in Actelion because we didn't have the money to do that. But we have decided to have been a little bit more master of our destiny by being the biggest, one of the biggest shareholders within Idorsia. So we have lived through activist time where people were trying to force us to sell this company at the worst time, for the worst reasons. And I didn't want to start again and be at the mercy of any financial activist. So things like that and many other things we have learned, and we are taking the consequences, and we are trying to implement that within Idorsia.
Does that mean you were frustrated at the end of your Actelion time?
Not at all. I'm just saying, not at all. But we had lived through problems. It was very frustrating to have financial activists on board. Every day to see in the newspaper, that you are bad, that you should be fired. It's not really pleasant. You don't like to open a newspaper where it says, they should go back, they should go. It's really not nice. So that I didn't want to live through. It can work after a certain time, but as you said, to live a passion, not to really fight people who are just sitting in London and just trying to use their money to influence, to make more money.
Since you were talking about the role of activist investors, a lot of companies deal with the same issue and the same problem in their view. Do you think that issue has become more important in the last couple of years, that companies are not able to do what they're supposed to do because of the role of the more important role of these investors?
I think it's a very important part of the business today, and some financial activists are very successful because basically they can grasp money very quickly, very short term, and they don't care what is going to happen in the future. So they have very low risk money and cash, so it has attracted a lot of people, and they play a more and more important role. So I think you need to be prepared for that. It's particularly damaging in a scientific-oriented company because they don't understand science at all, of course. They can understand business much better. They can reorganize company. That they are good at, and they can even evaluate it. But when you are in a scientific project, what was allowing them to say this project will fail, and they were completely wrong. All the projects they were saying will fail succeeded, and they were pushing us to sell the company where the share price was at 30, and we sold for the company was bought at 280. Look at how much money would have been stolen from the shareholders if it would have happened. That it's a good demonstration that clearly, in our case, it would have been a catastrophe.
When you say that a lot of people don't really understand what you're doing, is that one of your main challenges with Idorsia as well? I know you've got 11 drugs in the pipeline. You've got 4, I think, in the phase 3, so in final stage of tests. And I've been going through these titles, of course, as well. And I must admit, I don't really know, what they're about. Is that one of your challenges, to really having to explain to people what you're doing actually? You're a scientist at heart, but you have to explain what you're doing as well, right?
I think it's a very good point. It's very important as a scientist that you can explain things you are doing in simple terms and simple words. So it's not easy because it's very complicated, but I really hope that I can, and that is maybe it's something very important. I can explain to at least some shareholders in simple terms what we are doing, because we want to have shareholders who understand what we are doing. The biggest danger is when somebody invests into your company for the wrong reason. Mm-hmm. He thinks that it's going to be short, it's going to be much bigger than it is, or much smaller what it is.
So you don't want it to be a business opportunity for someone. They have to explain what you're doing.
Exactly. They have to understand. Yeah. They have to understand why they invest into a company. And I think that you see it's a very big danger that some pharma company try to hype one project and thousands of shareholders invest, and suddenly the project fails for a reason A or Z, which is normal because many scientific projects can fail, but never the shareholders understood the risk. So you need to explain the risk, and when there is a risk, you have to tell it. And then it's a decision of the shareholders to take or not to take the risk. And it's very, very important as a CEO, and I'm spending a lot of time for that, to explain to the shareholders what we are doing.
You obviously succeeded with that, because you recently released your results, and the shareholders were very happy. I mean, the share price went up. Is that because there's Jean-Paul Clozel attached to that share, or is it because of Idorsia? Some might say, he's so successful, I can't really go wrong with him. So is that success you're having linked to you or linked to the company?
I really hope it's not linked to me. I really hope so, and it's really a very honest answer. Because I always say something. In a company, a biotech company, there is only one hero. It's the product. You have a good product or you don't have a good product. You have a good drug or you don't have a good drug. Everyone is working around it. Everyone tries to discover this drug, try to develop it, try to provide it to the patients. It should not be the people. Even the person who has discovered it should not become the hero. The drug is a hero, and I really hope that one day, and I understand it's early, people will really understand the fantastic products that we have in Idorsia.
You once said that finding money is not the difficult part. The difficult part is really to be creating a new product, because if you don't have any product, you're dead. How difficult is that for you at the moment? I said it, you have 11 products in the pipeline, which is a lot. Are you confident that you can actually go through with these 11?
Certainly not 11. Not everyone will work. I try to explain. Usually maybe 2, 3, 4 of these 11. That's the reality.
But that's enough.
But that's enough. You don't need so many. 1 or 2 will be sufficient. This is the name of the game in pharmaceutical industry. So really, again, people have to understand that we will go through failures. We will not always have success. It's very important that the shareholders do not be disappointed because one study will be negative. That's a big relief in Idorsia, comparison to Actelion, where we had 1 product, basically, or 2 products. If they were failing, we were really in a bad situation. And I can tell you that my wife and myself, we had some very bad nights the days before getting the results, because we weren't sure. We were never sure. So here in Idorsia, we try to play. We have the chance to be able to play a little bit the statistical game and to know that part of our project will succeed, but we have so many that really we should succeed.
However, there's a big pressure. If you don't come up with new ideas, with new products, you're not going to make it in the end. If you talk about sleepless nights you had with your wife, does that ever worry you nowadays as well, that you know that you can't just rely on 1 or 2 drugs, that you have to keep that pipeline open? How big is that pressure?
Yeah, I think it's the pressure has to be there. I think that when you have been successful, and people consider that Actelion was successful, I always say you have to be modest. Genentech has been much bigger, much more successful. There are many companies, if you see Google, Apple, this is nothing compared to us. So we have to also put it in perspective. But compared to European standards and to the case, it has been considered as a success. You have to be very careful. Previous success can be a very big handicap. You have to say, you start from scratch in a way. You have to be not overconfident. You have to be ready for fights. You have to be ready for failures. You cannot count of your previous success to be sure that it will happen in the future. And to be overconfident, to become arrogant, to become, I would say, sure that everything will work, it's a big danger, and I am very conscious of that.
When you say that the patient should be at the center of all what you do, that's of course the doctor speaking. And you've been a doctor in your earlier life, so to speak. You've been a cardiologist. Have you ever missed not being a doctor anymore, not being with the patient in a one-to-one relationship? Or is it once a doctor, always a doctor?
I would say I love to do medicine. I spent 11 years, really, of my life, seeing patients, and I really love doing medicines. But the research aspect, the unknown, was more important. So when I was seeing a patient and I had an experiment to do, which was going on, I always had to be very careful not to think too much of the experiment. So I thought that I could not do both at the same time, and I didn't regret that. But what I have learned is what is a patient, how they can suffer, how can you help them. And that has been the motivation for the rest of my career.
Of course, you need communication skills as well as a doctor, being in close contact with your patients. Did you learn anything from being a doctor in your CEO position? I mean, do you deal with your employees in a way that you think, oh, I have learned that as a doctor with my patients, just as a communication tool, maybe?
Yeah, I think that it's a very good point, because I think that you learn a lot of things when you do medicine. When you learn medicine in university, you look anatomy, biology, you learn genetics, you don't learn communication. And I think that you should really have communication teachers, because what you see is so many patients are feeling bad because they have not the information. And so I realized very early that it's very important to discuss, to explain, and that a patient, we understand what is his disease, is going to be much more motivated to be treated, is going to help you to be treated. So you are absolutely right. I've learned that if you explain what you do, why you do it, you already have made a very big step.
And when you do that in your company now as well, do you consider yourself a good boss?
I don't know. I should ask my collaborators. What I know is I try to do a big boss, but I have one concept as a boss. I think that people believe that you have rights when you are the boss. I think that I have duties. I'm here to have the life of my collaborators the best as I can. And I feel that I am at the service to find the money for them, to find the right buildings, to find the right projects, everything. I feel that this is my duties, and I think I have very little rights. So, and that's a fantastic pleasure, because really, I have to say, one of the biggest pleasure I have in every day, if I cross a young scientist and he says, I have a fantastic project, I'm very happy to be working at Idorsia, thank you very much. And sometimes I have people telling me thank you. That's the most gratifying things which can happen to me.
Can it be overwhelming as well, working for you and for your wife, since you're so linked to that company, that someone might not have the liberty or might have the feeling that I can't really do what I want to do, because there's always the family Clozel attached.
No, I think we try to be very open, and that could be a risk. It's absolutely true, but we try to have that in mind, that to give this freedom. Of course, me and my wife, we know what we want to do, and if people tell me tomorrow we are going to make some electronics, I will say no. We are there to make drugs. So clearly, we also like to have a certain directions, but I think it can be done if you respect the people and if you respect as scientists. I think it's not a big issue.
You're still working, and you're still working heavily. You said it yourself. Do you ever see yourself not work that much? I mean, once you're 70 or 75, will we ever see a Jean-Paul Clozel not working?
Not working, maybe not, but less working, I'm sure. And clearly, I think you have to think of finding a better CEO. I think, I'm sure there are people much better than us. I think that, as I said, you have a certain vision. I would like to put the company on tracks. And then we will see what will happen. And I think that it will be very important for me to find the right management, to think of the future. That's a big difference between people who want to make a short-term investment and people who want to think long-term. Everything I do every day is long-term thinking. If I find a manager, I think of a manager, we can be there in 10 years. If you find a project, if you work on the project, you think already what will happen in 10 years. If you think you are going to sell it in 2 or 3 years, you don't take the same decisions.
But for the moment, I take it that you're still working. I was trying to find out of any hobbies of yours. The only thing I've read was that you're fly fishing and that you don't have time for that anymore. Do you ever find time to fly fish anymore?
I did, but this year was a bad year with bad weather. But, I have to say, I hope I'm a better scientist and a fly fisher. Unfortunately, I don't have the experience and maybe, but I love it. And I think it's a little bit the same thing. You have to be optimistic. Even you see these fish that don't catch anything, but you think that one day, one moment, these fish are going to catch your fly. So it's a little bit the same feeling.
I want to end up with 3 short questions. First of all, if you think back 50 years ago, when you were 12 years old, what was your dream? What did you want to become?
I wanted to find new drugs. And people have a hard time to believe. My father had bought me a microscope, so I was looking at blood. I was really always very interested in research. And in the family, with my parents, the hero were the people were the pastor of the world. The people discovered it was poliomyelitis, the first vaccine were there. So really, the scientists were the hero. So I wanted to do what I do. It's like living a dream, really.
So you actually realized your dream. So what would the 12-year-old say if you could talk to you now, what you've achieved? What would we think about that, the career you made?
I think it has been an incredible lucky, and I think that I've been had the fantastic chance to have chosen a job. So I think that what I would say is what I say to many people: do research, really do science and research. This is so fantastic, and I really have to say one thing: not enough people, not enough young people do science. Science is going to change the world, will change the world. It's a way to change the world. And too many people don't think of that and don't do. And the best students, they should do science. They should not do finance.
You kind of already answered my last question. We would have been, what's your main message? What's your main advice for young people or for people going into that field?
Yeah, I think live your passion. Really, and do research, do experiments, try to really crack the problems, try to understand how this disease or how this virus, these bacteria are working, try to really find ways to help patients. And that's fantastic. Or do science, do mathematics, do other things, but really go to concrete and really and work hard, but work on do science and love science.
We can tell. Jean-Paul Clozel, thank you very much.
Thank you.